The forest, shrouded in a mysterious calm, witnessed an unusual walk. Lenore, a creature of light step and a gaze full of playful anticipation, wandered among the trees like a dancer engaged in an ancient ritual. His gaze occasionally slid over the surrounding nature, searching for a small but extremely important creature, Lucia, his furry companion. Lucia, a small fox with bright, expressive eyes, found shelter under a bush, as if trying to blend in with nature and its unique rhythm. When Lenore found his friend, his face lit up with a smile. He lifted Lucia gently into his arms, like a mother would take a newborn baby in her arms. The return home promised to be warm and cozy, for Lenore's every step was filled with care and awe for his unusual companion. Lucia's story was as unique as it was sad. She had once been a girl full of life and dreams, but circumstances had turned her into a little fox. For a month now, she had had to get used to a new, unknown reality in the body of a divine beast, where every sound, every movement seemed alien and new to her. This invisible thread of fate, which bound her to Lenore, became not only a test for her, but also an unexpected chance for a new life, where friendship and mutual understanding became a kind of beacon in the darkness. So, to the sound of rustling leaves and birdsong, Lenore carried Lucia home, wrapping her in his care. It was a path not just through the forest, but through the intertwining of destinies and stories, where every step was filled with warmth and light, giving hope that even in the most unusual situation one can find the way home to one's heart and true self. In an era shrouded in the veil of ancient legends and myths, the world witnessed a miracle born from the shards of a fallen god. These shards, shimmering with all shades of life, took the forms of a wide variety of creatures, from noble silver foxes to the mighty green serpents that dwell in the depths of the earth. These beasts, like children of nature itself, became the guardians of ancient power, the legacy of their creator, possessing the ability to speak to the spirits and nature. They took care of the forests, skies, and seas, filling the world with harmony and balance. Their existence was a gift to all living beings, a bridge between the invisible spirit world and material reality. They were the link that maintained the balance and well-being of all living things. The forests flourished under their watchful eye, the skies remained clear and pure, and the seas were full of life and mystery. However, as is often the case in stories of great powers, the moment of testing came. A catastrophe of unprecedented power threatened to destroy the continent, to engulf all life in chaos and destruction. At that critical moment, when darkness seemed to engulf everything, the divine beasts joined forces in an act of unprecedented valor and sacrifice. Their combined efforts averted the disaster, saving the continent and its inhabitants from imminent doom. But after the day when salvation was achieved, these majestic beings, who had given the world hope and salvation, seemed to vanish. No eye could see them in the green of the forests, in the depths of the sea, or in the expanse of the sky. They became mere echoes in the hearts of those who remembered their deeds, and legends passed down from generation to generation, a reminder that the greatest deeds often remain invisible, but their echoes resound through the ages, inspiring hearts and souls to do deeds for the greater good. Lucia, a small creature with an amazing history, shrouded in magic and mystery, felt lost in this new world at times. Her amazement at the speed and agility of Lenore, whom she called Daddy, was boundless. Despite her small stats and new life, she marveled at how accurately and quickly he could find her, no matter where she went in her endless attempts to explore the world around her. Her parents, with ancient and powerful abilities, always seemed to have the supernatural ability to know where she was, creating a sense of an invisible bond uniting them despite all obstacles. After the catastrophe that shook the foundations of their world, many divine beasts that were once connected to spirits and nature lost this unique ability to communicate. The invisible threads that connected them to the spirits were severed, leaving them in a world where they still possessed remnants of their great power, including the ability to take on human form. This ability became their bridge to the rest of the world, allowing them to continue to influence events, though not as clearly and powerfully as before. However, Lucia faced an enigma that made her an exception even among such unique creatures. Unlike her parents and relatives, she not only could not return to her former form, but she was also unable to speak. This inability to communicate with words added to her misery, making her world a quieter and lonelier place. Her silence was a mystery that they were all trying to solve, looking for ways to recover what had been lost, so that Lucia could express herself again, to share her thoughts and feelings that were boiling inside her, but remained unspoken. In this new, changed world, where ancient powers were losing their power and great beings had disappeared, leaving only legends, Lucia and her family continued to find their way. They sought to find ways to recover what had been lost, to find new purpose in a world that had changed so radically. Their story was filled with magic, mystery, and the hope that even in the darkest of times, light could be found to lead them to new discoveries about themselves and the world around them. In the depths of her thoughts, Lucia was immersed in memories of her past life that were shrouded in a fog of bitterness and misunderstanding. Her heart yearned to unravel the dark secret that bound her to her brother, a secret stained with the blood of their own family. Why had her brother taken such an insane and irreparable step, killing her and her loved ones? The question tormented her, but even the thought of a possible meeting with her brother was no consolation, for the circumstances of their separation made any dialogue impossible. There was a sadness in Lucia's eyes that she couldn't hide, and her gaze stared off into the distance, as if searching for answers in the void. Lenore, noticing the heaviness in Lucia's heart, decided to lighten the mood with a light joke. He said with a smile that his appearance had probably prevented Lucia from conquering the north, trying to distract her from her gloomy thoughts and bring her back to reality, where they could rely on each other. His words were an attempt to give Lucia a moment of light-heartedness and to remind her that even in the darkest of times there could be a glimmer of light. As they continued their journey, filled with reflection and brief altercations, they finally reached the destination of their journey, the mysterious cave where Saria, Lucia's mother, was to meet them. This place was shrouded in a halo of mysticism and ancient legends, and its air was saturated with the expectation of something great. The cave, hidden from prying eyes, had long kept secrets that only a select few could reach. Entering it was like entering another world, where the past and the future were intertwined in a tangle of destinies, and every step inside could reveal new secrets or challenges. Saria was waiting for them there, ready to reveal to Lucia the pages of their family history that had been hidden from her until now. As soon as they touched the cave wall, the marker, as if expecting their touch, flashed, illuminating the space with a mysterious light. This light was the key that opened a portal to another dimension, transporting Lenore and Lucia to a marvelous place where time and space seemed to be altered. They found themselves in a crystalline cavern, where every wall, every corner shimmered with every shade of the rainbow, making it feel as if they were in the heart of a majestic, shimmering crystal. This place was filled with magic, the sounds reflected off the walls, creating an incredible melody that was absorbing, making you forget about everything in the world. In this mysterious and magical space, Saria, Lucia's mother, was already waiting for them. Her figure, surrounded by light, seemed weightless and ethereal. His arms outstretched to the sides were full of warmth and love, as if they spoke without words about the readiness to embrace and comfort, about the desire to share the warmth of his heart. The anticipation of seeing her daughter made her heart beat faster, her every gesture full of tenderness and anticipation. But Lenore, taking the initiative and wishing to add sincerity and warmth to the moment, embraced Saria, gently sandwiched between him and Lucia. This embrace became a symbol of their unity, the bond that united their destinies. In that moment, they weren't just friends or relatives, they were something more. They were one soul, woven together by feelings, experiences, and a shared history. Lenore's embrace in this magical setting of the Crystal Cave was an expression of the boundless support, understanding, and comfort they were ready to offer each other at any moment. In this crystalline cavern, where time seemed to stop and light played on the many facets, creating an enchanting spectacle, Saria made a truly important gesture. She held out a letter to Lenore, enclosed in a cover of the finest parchment, which held the secrets of the past and the keys to understanding the present. Lanor, scrutinizing the contents, shared the momentous news with Lucia. Events had occurred in the Rocham Empire that overturned the foundations of power. The emperor, their leader and protector, was murdered, and the blame for this horrifying act fell upon the princess Ionel de Rocham. It was that name that caused a whirlwind of emotion and a flash of understanding in Lucia, for Ionel was herself in her past life. All the pieces of the puzzle suddenly came together, revealing to Lucia the reason why her brother had turned against her, destroying their family. This revelation was like a lightning bolt that pierced the darkness of incomprehension, illuminating her mind with the answers to the questions that had plagued her all along. When she learned that she was Princess Ionel, accused of the worst of crimes, Lucia realized the depth of the tragedy of her family's past. Now it was clear to her why her brother had taken the desperate step of killing her, for in his eyes she was a traitor, a threat to the empire and their family. This moment of epiphany in the crystal cave, illuminated by the light of magic crystals, became for Lucia a turning point, the moment when the past and present merged into one, giving rise to a new chapter in her life. Lucia, overwhelmed with emotion, could not hold back her tears, and at that moment her parents enveloped her with care and attention, trying in every way to comfort her. In the back of their minds, they harbored a fear that this sudden outbreak of grief might not only be due to emotional pain, but physical pain as well, fearing for the health of their little fox. Pictures flashed in their minds of how Lucia, exhausted and weary, might at any moment collapse without strength. Saria, one of her dearest people, tenderly and affectionately began to wipe the tears from her cheeks, taking her in her arms, as if trying with her warmth and care to banish all the coldness that had settled in Lucia's soul. At this moment in time, Lucia was consumed with thoughts of the injustice her brother had brought with him. These thoughts hovered in her mind, like caged birds yearning for freedom. It seemed to her that everything around her had turned against her, and it was his fault, the one who had blurred the line between truth and lies, who had spilled the blood of the royal family and brought shame and accusations upon her. A definite purpose flared up in her heart with a bright flame to uncover the truth. Lucia had set herself a task that could not be delayed. She sought not just to clear her name, but to show the world the true face of the betrayal her brother was hiding. The path promised to be thorny and full of obstacles, but an unshakable conviction was born in her soul. Everyone, from the smallest to the greatest, must learn the truth about what had happened. She felt it was her mission to bring justice and restore honor to her name, which had been mercilessly tarnished. Lucia opened her eyes suddenly, under the cover of night, as darkness wrapped the earth in its mysterious cloak. Her sleep had been interrupted, but her surroundings were calm, disturbed only by the light breathing of her parents, sleeping peacefully at her side. At that moment, she realized that she could not remain inactive. Thinking about the fate of the empire, about the need to intervene in current affairs, filled her with determination. But the impenetrable forests surrounding her home stood in the way of her goals like an insurmountable wall. The realization that she could not get through this natural fortress alone made her think of other ways to achieve her goal. The thought crossed Lucia's mind that first she needed to master the art of human speech in order to communicate with those who could help her on her quest. To this end, she tried to make clear and intelligible sounds, but her attempts were in vain. Only a faint growl, not resembling words, escaped from her throat. At this moment in time, as if playing a cruel joke on her, fate provided another twist. Her parents woke up. A look of surprise and tenderness broke into their faces when they noticed that their little fox was awake and engaged in something quite unusual. Seeing Lucia's efforts, they didn't ask questions, but instead offered her a snack, realizing that the night's adventures might whet her appetite. This moment was filled with warmth and caring as parents, despite not understanding their child's actions, still supported her by offering comfort and reinforcement in the form of a nighttime snack. So, in the heart of the night, between sleep and wakefulness, Lucia found comfort in simple gestures of parental love, knowing that her journey would be difficult and full of challenges, but knowing that she had a solid support behind her. Amid the rustling of leaves and the faint whispering of the wind, Lenore, looking at his family with paternal grandeur, interrupted the silence with an important announcement. His words, full of determination and seriousness, came like a thunderclap to the ears of those present. He expressed the need to go to the human world, feeling the gravity of the task ahead. Lenore realized that if he didn't take this step, the peaceful forest that was home to his family could become a target for Vermont, a force whose threat hung in the air like an invisible fog. In addition, his plans also included a visit to the newly minted emperor, a task that carried both dangers and opportunities. At that moment, the scene was brought to life by Lucia, whose heart raced in anticipation of adventure and the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than her everyday life. Her small paws carried her to her father as fast as her strength would allow, and sparks of hope and determination glittered in her eyes. She saw in her father's words her chance to enter Roachim, a magical place she had only dreamed of, and perhaps learn the very rumors that could shed light on the dark corners of her destiny. Lenore, sensing an internal struggle between paternal concern and a desire to empower his daughter to reach her potential, invited Lucia to join him on this dangerous journey. But Saria, whose maternal instinct was more vigilant than ever, was not in favor of the idea. Her heart was filled with anxiety and fear for her daughter, realizing all the risks and dangers that lurked outside their secluded haven. This confrontation of views on Lucia's future between Lenore and Saria created a tension hanging in the air like a harbinger of a thunderstorm that foretold trials and obstacles in the path of this unusual family. In a shady corner of the magical forest, where different creatures coexist peacefully, a serious conversation broke the silence. Saria, with concern reflecting in her eyes, shared her misgivings about the journey ahead. She confidently expressed her doubts, emphasizing that the human world seemed overly dangerous to her for unprepared souls, like their little fox, Lucia. With the utmost seriousness and concern for her child's future, Saria stressed the need for careful preparation before letting Lucia into the uncharted and possibly dangerous lands beyond their cozy corner of the world. Lucia, small and hopeful, turned to her father. Her eyes sparkled with pleading and curiosity, so softly and directly that even the stoutest heart could not resist such a look. Lenore, her father, like ice under the spring sun, could not resist this defenseless request. His voice, full of warmth and confidence, cut through the air, promising safety and protection in the uncharted lands of men. With these words, he not only calmed his wife's anxiety, but also ignited a spark of adventure in the hearts of the entire family. Lenore, the embodiment of courage and determination, was fully confident in his ability to protect and defend Lucia from all possible adversity that could befall them in the human world. Like a stone wall, he is ready to become an insurmountable barrier between any threat and his daughter, confirming his willingness to open for her the gateway to new worlds. The moment Lenore hugged his little fox tightly, the air around them was filled with magic. The world around them began to distort, as if they were a drop of water sliding across the surface of a mirror, changing and vibrating with their every movement. And so, without the slightest warning, she and Lucia found themselves in a forest where every ray of light shining through the lush foliage seemed like something magical, making it seem that every rustle and every movement in this forest was part of a large, living organism. Meanwhile, Saria, with motherly care and foresight, stayed behind to prepare everything necessary for the upcoming ceremony for Lucia. She promised to arrive as soon as everything was ready so that their baby could fully accept and understand his purpose and place in the world. Lenore, using this moment alone with Lucia, decided to teach her the basic rules that were to be their foundation as they traveled to the human world. He explained that there were 3 immutable laws for their kind. The first law stated that they were not allowed to interfere with human history, lest they upset the delicate balance of the world. The second law was equally important. No one must find out that they were divine beasts, inhabitants of a parallel world where magic and the power of nature governed all existence. Finally, the third and strictest law forbade falling in love with humans, as such feelings could lead to unpredictable and often tragic consequences. Lenore emphasized that breaking any of these laws would result in Lucia's eternal imprisonment in the divine forest, from which there was no turning back. This conversation wasn't just a warning, it was a transmission of ancient knowledge that was meant to help Lucia understand the boundaries of her world and the world of the people between whom she was the bridge. Lenore knew that his daughter faced great challenges, but he also believed that the strength of her spirit and the wisdom she would learn from these lessons would help her get through them with honor. As Lenore and Lucia approached the majestic gate, they were confronted by a building that embodied the architectural genius of the human world. The grandeur of the place was emphasized by a unique flag flying proudly above the roof. It depicted a fox, bright and lively, reminiscent of Lucia, which gave the scene a special atmosphere of familiarity and predestination. The guards' attention quickly focused on the approaching Lenora. One movement, one glance, and the guards were already aware of what was happening. The sound of the bell, humming a disturbance of calm, immediately filled the space, signaling the arrival of unusual guests. The gate, as if by magic, slowly and solemnly opened before them, inviting them to go inside. As soon as they crossed the threshold, a row of guards lined up in front of them. This was more than just a meeting. It was a recognition of merit and greatness. The guards, gathered in formation, addressed Lenore with pride and respect, calling him Duke Elharan. It was not just an address, it was a recognition of his services to the world, a sign that his name and deeds were known and respected here in this corner of the human world. The atmosphere around him was filled with a sense of grandeur and history. Every step on this land, every glance at the surrounding buildings and the faces of the guards reminded them of how important every moment in this encounter was. Everything around them seemed to be part of a great and important event, a historical moment that they had witnessed and participated in. Lenore, Duke of Elharan, possessed an extraordinary character that set him apart from the aristocracy and military greatnesses of the human world. His infrequent appearance at social events, as well as his tendency to sometimes ignore even direct orders from the emperor himself, fostered rumors and speculation among high society. Although only a select few could boast of being close to this mysterious duke, no one would think of looking down on him. For behind him stood not only aristocratic majesty and unwavering will, but also an impeccable swordsmanship that was the stuff of legend. These legends of Lenore were not empty words or exaggerated stories spread for praise. They were rooted deep in reality, in the exploits the Duke had performed. One of these incomparable deeds was saving the empire from a formidable invasion from the north, which he accomplished all alone. At a time when darkness was closing in on the borders and the air was filled with the cold of the coming invasion, it was Lenore who became the beacon of light that braved the coming storm. His actions on the battlefield were filled not only with impeccable technique and strength, but also with incredible strategic acumen, allowing him to triumph where entire armies could have failed. This feat went down in history, solidifying not only the borders of the empire, but also the legend of the Duke as a warrior whose sword could change the course of history. Thus, Lenore became not just a noble duke among men, but a living legend, a symbol of unwavering strength and courage, whose exploits stirred the imagination and inspired feats, and his name was pronounced with the deepest respect and admiration. That afternoon, as Lenore, with his noble appearance and regal bearing, strolled through the endless corridors of the grand palace, his path crossed with Aiden, the devoted butler whose face expressed not the slightest emotion. Aiden, a man with an impenetrable gaze and sternness in every movement, pointed Lenore in the direction leading to one of the rooms hidden behind massive doors without further ado. This room held countless documents that formed small mountains on desks and shelves, creating an atmosphere of chaos and endless work. Lenore, whose spirit never aspired to human routine, offered splendor and entertainment that might dilute the monotony of palace routine, even if he disliked them. But Aiden, an unwavering guardian of order and discipline, remained adamant in the face of such suggestions. With unyielding will and arguments based on necessity and responsibility, he forced Lenore to put his banquet dreams aside and concentrate on his work. Aidan, as a trusted guardian of palace order, reminded Lenore of the importance and urgency of the tasks before him, encouraging him to dive into the world of administrative affairs and decisions requiring immediate attention. Thus, under Aidan's stern gaze, Lenore, with a heavy weight in his heart, set to work, immersed in a sea of papers and notes, each of which demanded his urgent decision and attention. This day promised to be long and arduous, full of challenges to his patience and perseverance. At one of those moments when the air in the room was saturated with the scent of ink and parchment, and Lenore, surrounded by mountains of documents, was trying to put his estate in order, Aidan interrupted the monotonous rustle of papers with an unaccustomed anxiety in his voice. He reported that the barbarians, longtime enemies, had found a way to overcome the walls that protected their lands. The news might have sent the less fortunate into panic, but Lenore met Aidan's words with unwavering confidence. A twinkle of defiance flickered in his eyes as he dismissed the threat dismissively, comparing the barbarians to pathetic bugs, not worthy of their attention. It was the reaction of a man accustomed to overcoming difficulties, not accepting the thought of defeat. At that moment, Lenore approached Lucia, his young daughter, who was watching with bewilderment and slight fear, not realizing the depth of the situation. Her innocent eyes were full of questions when her father, as the embodiment of protection and strength, lifted her into his arms. Confident and calm, he said he would deal with the barbarians later, emphasizing that in the face of danger, his priority remained the safety and well-being of his daughter. In the privacy of his room, far from the hustle and bustle of palace affairs, Lenore faced another challenge, the need to reassure his daughter. Lucia, a fragile creature, sensed the tension in her father's voice, and though he tried to seem adamant, fear gripped her little heart. Noticing the anxiety that had gripped Lucia after his harsh words about the enemy threat, Lenore, with softness in his voice and tenderness in his movements, tried to reassure her that there was no cause for concern. His usually firm and resolute voice sounded different, full of warmth and concern, for nothing was more important to him than the welfare of his little girl. Lucia, unaccustomed to seeing her father in such a state, needed his reassurance and protection to regain her composure. In that special moment, when the warm and cozy feeling of family reunion filled the space between Lucia and Lenore, the little but plucky girl nuzzled her face into her father, Lenore, as if seeking protection and comfort from him. In her eyes, even the very shadows of fear and doubt that would scare anyone away dissipated before the undeniable love and affection for her father. She accepted him as he was, with all his secrets and mysteries, confident that despite all his possible ugly sides, he was still her father, a staunch protector and reliable support. Lenore, for his part, could not hide his inner confusion and slight sadness when faced with the reality that his daughter, such a marvelous and touching creature of sincerity and purity, was unable to assume human form as was given to so many other beings of their world. He wanted to brag about her cuteness to everyone, but he knew that her uniqueness and peculiarities required special understanding and often caused misunderstanding among others. When Lenore, agitated and thoughtful, left the room, leaving Lucia alone, she went to bed, pondering the past communication, immersed in her thoughts and feelings. But the peace did not last long. Suddenly, in the heart of the night, Lucia felt something strange that made her instantly jump up from her seat. Before her, surprised and widened with amazement, as if from the very fabric of reality, a portal began to form, filled with pulsing light and energy, like a gateway to another world. From this vortex of light and magic, step by step emerged the Archmage, a being wrapped in mystery and power, whose appearance heralded important events and changes in the life of little Lucia. In a world where magic is intertwined with everyday life, the meeting of a powerful Archmage and a small but unusually clever fox, Lucia, is the beginning of something incredible. Lucia, with her inexhaustible curiosity and sharp mind, couldn't imagine that her small, furry life would change dramatically after this encounter. It seemed that the Archmage, that majestic and all-powerful wizard, existed in a completely different dimension, where the little foxes did not play and had no role. However, everything changed the moment their gazes crossed. The Archmage, whose name was known far beyond his own world, experienced a sudden attack of fear at the sight of Lucia. This meeting of eyes seemed to turn his understanding of reality upside down. What could so frighten an all-powerful wizard in a small, defenseless creature? At that moment, time seemed to stand still, and all present held their breath, watching the further development of events. As he approached Lucia, the Archmage gently lifted her by her tail, lifting her off the ground. With surprise and a touch of irony in his voice, he called her a ball of wool. It was not just a reference to her appearance, but a recognition of her uniqueness and the special place she could hold in his life. In that moment, a bond was created between two beings so different, yet able to understand and accept each other. It was the beginning of an unusual friendship, full of magical adventures and discoveries that Lucia could not even dream of, standing at the threshold of her unknown future together with the Archmage. After unexpectedly labeling his new friend as a hairball, the Archmage, whether or not realizing the full extent of his actions, sought to arouse new emotions in Lucia in an attempt to disinhibit her. Lucia, though a small creature, had a distinct personality and did not tolerate any disrespect, even from a powerful figure like the Archmage. Discontent was maturing in her thoughts, and she did not spare it, showering the Archmage with mental rebukes for his harsh words. However, when she tried to give physical expression to her displeasure by attempting to kick him, her paw was unfortunately too short to reach its target. This moment, filled with embarrassment and frustration, made Lucia feel a keen sense of shame. At the same time, in the office of Lenore, an influential and respected person in the human world, a drama of much larger proportions was unfolding. Lenore was completely absorbed in analyzing the critical situation that had arisen on the wall, a powerful defensive structure designed to protect their lands. He had received a report of a recent barbarian breakthrough through the defenses that had left 20 men wounded. The report was greeted with a heavy heart, for every life was valued and every warrior was considered an integral part of their society. The last month was characterized by increased barbarian activity, which created additional tension and required an immediate and effective solution. Lenore, with his deep understanding of strategy and tactics, realized the gravity of the moment and prepared for actions that could prevent similar incidents in the future, seeking to ensure peace and security for his people. As the conversation shifted from acute security concerns to more personal topics, Lenore suddenly mentioned that the barbarians had become more active since Lucia's birth, that little Lucia whom he had called Luinstella with affection and special feeling. As he thought of little Lucia, he took his mind off the gravity of current events for a moment, allowing himself to smile and smile in a kindly way at the name. The name sounded like a musical note in the air, instantly capturing the attention of everyone present. Aiden, usually so focused on matters of national importance and the threat of barbarian raids, couldn't resist that note of innocence and purity. However, reality quickly burst back into their conversation when Lenore reminded them of the looming political issues, switching to the topic of the new emperor. Aiden, sensing the importance of the moment, hastened to announce that 3 letters had already arrived from the emperor, emphasizing the need for a prompt reply. The letters were likely to contain questions and suggestions that needed immediate attention and clarification. However, Lenore, although recognizing the importance of these messages, did not take the situation seriously, which could indicate either his inner calm and confidence that any political issues could be resolved without haste, or his deliberate disregard for a possible threat or suggestion coming from the new ruler. This frivolity, or perhaps Lenore's deeply considered strategy, added a note of intrigue to their discussion, making one wonder about the fine line between wisdom and recklessness in governing the state. In one of the quiet moments when the world seemed absorbed in its own concerns, Lenore, whose heart and soul were filled with magic, suddenly felt a sudden burst of magical energy. It was like a call that could not be ignored. Realizing the importance of the moment made him decide that it was time for educational measures. In a world where magic permeates every corner of reality, guidance and instruction are key to maintaining balance and harmony. Meanwhile, far from where Lenore had felt the magical flash, in a cozy and silence-filled study, Sir Vermont was absorbed in an entirely different matter. He fed fruit to a little fox named Lucia with care and attention. This act was more than just caring for an animal. Sir Vermont kidnapped Lucia without fear of the possible consequences of his act. In his eyes, it was an act of courage and a challenge to the ordinary. Lucia, finding herself in an unfamiliar place, began to scrutinize her new sanctuary. Her gaze glided over the countless shelves of books, which made her slightly amazed and delighted. With every minute she spent in this room, she became more and more convinced that she was in no other place than the Tower of Mages. Every object and every book was imbued with magic and knowledge hidden from ordinary eyes. This realization made her heart beat more frequently, and her thoughts whirl as she tried to figure out exactly what adventures lay ahead. Despite the fact that Lucia was in an unfamiliar and perhaps even dangerous place, Sir Vermont's fruit trick was surprisingly effective. The soft taste of ripe fruit instantly won her trust, creating an illusion of safety and peace. While Lucia was enjoying the unexpected treat, fate presented a new twist. Servants knocked at Sir Vermont's door, announcing a guest who had come from a distant empire, a place whose histories were filled with intrigue and mystery. Sir Vermont, being busy raising his unusual pet, responded with bewilderment and initially refused to receive a visitor. But the guest was not one to back down easily. The persistence and determination with which he demanded an audience finally aroused Vermont's curiosity. The latter, unwilling to leave his business, instructed the servants to inquire into the reason for this persistent visit. The response that followed from the servants was startling. The guest had arrived to reveal the truth about the death of the past emperor, a secret surrounded by rumor and speculation echoing throughout the empire. The news made Lucia's heart race. She was closely involved in the story, certain that her brother was trying to get rid of all the evidence and that she was the one who had been framed to get away with it. Memories of her past life and the accusations that had been weighing over her suddenly came alive in her mind. With a fervor and desperation born of a desire for justice and to clear her name, Lucia decided to act. She realized that this particular guest might hold the key to unlocking her own story, and so she was determined to convince Vermont to accept him. In this desire of hers lurked not only the hope of personal redemption, but also a desire to show that even in a world where intrigue and conspiracy hang in the air, truth will always find its way to discovery. The moment Vermont, with ease and care, added some more juicy fruit to Lucia's plate, she, in a playful burst of tenderness, lightly bit his finger. This sweet gesture was met with the unexpected news from Vermont that he needed to receive an unexpected guest. Wasting no time, he gathered himself to leave, leaving Lucia alone in the cozily furnished study, filled with the warmth of books and the quiet light of the desk lamp. A wave of sadness swept over her heart at the unexpected separation. The realization that an important conversation would take place without her participation seemed to exacerbate her sense of loneliness. Lucia, left in the silence-engulfed room, could only wallow in her musings and hope. Hope warmed her heart, hope that the information being discussed, echoing through the walls, would prove to be the key to vindicating her name. Deep down, she firmly believed that in life there was always a way out, always a chance for even the most grievous charges to be corrected. This faith was her support, a light in the tunnel that filled her aspirations and dreams with vitality, despite all the difficulties and trials. She imagined how this information, like a key to a locked door, would unlock the path to freedom and the restoration of her good name. But for now, she could only wait, comforting herself with the thought that perhaps things would soon change for the better. As soon as the meeting entered its active phase, the spacious hall froze in anticipation. One by one, the guests began to introduce themselves, enveloping the room in a web of their titles and ranks. Vermont, however, towering with his unbending article, interrupted this ceremony with dignity and firmness in his voice. With icy calmness, he declared that the walls of the Mage Tower were impregnable to worldly ambitions, and that here, in this place of power and knowledge, all earthly titles lost their meaning, becoming nothing more than empty sound. At this point, the guests, in an attempt to seize the initiative, declared that they had knowledge of the true circumstances of the emperor's death. Their words hung in the air like a heavy fog, promising to reveal a mystery tangled with intrigue and arcane knowledge. But Vermont, defying subterfuge and manipulation, immediately rejected their assumptions. His certainty that the princess had killed her father in a fit of rage was unshakable. He considered this version of events more than obvious, requiring no further proof. The guests, however, unwilling to give up so easily, resisted his words with unexpected passion. They declared with one voice that the princess would never have committed such an act, that her soul was pure and bright. Their voices filled the hall with pleas for help. They begged Vermont to provide them with magical support, troops of wise mages to uncover the true nature of what had happened and bring justice. But Vermont, in spite of their persuasions and requests, remained adamant. His refusal sounded decisive and final, cutting off all hope of his assistance in the matter. Thus, between the walls of the ancient Tower of Mages, a drama played out, the outcome of which could change the fates of many. But Vermont stood firm as the guardian of centuries of tradition and knowledge. As the feast reached its climax, one of the guests, under the influence of drink or a sudden burst of courage, decided to defy conventional norms. This unexpected act was to put nothing less than the name of their own captain, Lord Abelard, on the line. The point of his action was not just to cause shock among those present, but he claimed to whitewash the honor of the princess by involving the name of a high-profile individual in this risky gesture. Vermont, whose patience and strategic thinking were known to many, paused for a moment as if weighing the magnitude of what had happened. A statement came from his lips, full of contempt, not so much for the challenge as for the very thought that anyone could recklessly risk so highly prized an asset, the name of a lord, the lord of their lands. Vermont condemned Lord Abelard's audacity in allowing such an act, but despite his outrage, decided to send a mage with the group. The move was not motivated by a desire to support recklessness, but to secure the process and perhaps make some good out of the situation. Meanwhile, far from these events, Lucia, the princess in question, showed no less ingenuity. While in the Tower of Magicians, immersed in the study of books, she discovered a new truth. Her quest for knowledge and curiosity prompted the girl to climb up on the window to verify her assumption. And so, when she barely touched that thought, the magic of Vermont enveloped her like a warm cloak and instantly transported her to a place where the threats and dangers were not so great. This act not only saved the princess from potential danger, but also showed how deep and unpredictable Vermont's magical abilities are, as well as its concern for those caught up in the whirlwind of events spawned by one rash challenge. As the tension reached its peak, Vermont, wrapping his secure arms around Foxy, called upon the powers of the ancient magic of teleportation. A burst of light marked their instantaneous passage through space, transporting them swiftly to their intended location. No sooner had they found solid ground beneath their feet than a cold blade was unexpectedly pressed against Vermont's throat. Turning around, Vermont found that the source of this threat was none other than Lenore. With irony and a faint smile on his face, expressed his disapproval of Vermont's actions, warning him against rash actions with his sister. The scene was rich in emotion, for Lucia, finding herself unexpectedly in the arms of her brother, experienced the shock of discovering the existence of such a relative. Her gaze, full of amazement and curiosity at the same time, slid over the faces of those present, trying to find echoes of family traits in them. Lenore, however, continued to hold the taut string of tension and reminded Vermont threateningly of how close he was to his own demise, despite the bloodline that bound them together. Realizing, however, that the moment of danger had passed, and he now held not a threat but the possibility of a family reunion in his hands, Lanor slowly hid his sword, allowing the atmosphere to become less tense. Thus, a moment that could have ended in tragedy turned into a turning point that opened a new chapter in the characters' lives, full of unpredictable discoveries and, perhaps, the beginning of the road to mutual understanding and reconciliation within a family long marred by misunderstandings and disagreements. In an atmosphere where the tension from the recent conflict was still simmering, Lenore leaned over to Lucia as if trying to lighten the mood. His voice, barely audible but full of concern, cut the silence with the question of whether Vermont had done her any harm. Vermont, hastily entering the conversation, dispelled the apprehension by assuring that his actions were limited to care and concern shown in the simple gesture of feeding. This moment, however insignificant at first glance, acted as eloquent proof of his intentions. Then, wrapping the situation in light irony, Vermont asked a question concerning the reasons for Lenore's long absence from the human world, linking it to concern for a hairball, which was an unexpected and rather original designation for his daughter. Lenore, as if picking up a ball of misunderstanding, did not hide his disappointment at such a nickname, which lacked proper paternal pride and warmth. Vermont, for his part, could not refrain from smiling as he watched the reaction of Lucia, who, being an unwilling participant in this conversation, had become the object of his affectionate feelings. As he bade farewell to the gathering, he mentioned that their next meeting might not be any time soon, not until the next emperor dies, leaving a note of mystery and anticipation of future events in the air. This moment of farewell filled the space with a sense of incompleteness and at the same time anticipation of a new chapter in their story that was yet to unfold. After a moment of farewell filled with lightness and warmth, Lenore, as if yielding to a sudden impulse of determination, urged Vermont to join him on an unexpected journey. As if experiencing a sea of emotions, Vermont could not hide his excitement as his eyes, reflecting the world of water and light, filled with tears. They were tears not so much of grief as of exasperation and perhaps grief, for Lenore, in his style, had added a touch of humor and unpredictability by suggesting that Vermont take over some of his duties. In response to Vermont's attempt to evade responsibility by mentioning the repayment of the tower repair debt, Lenore, with a spark in his eyes, reminded him of the interest, as if it were a game in which each move had its own purpose. This moment exposed their relationship, full of competition but also deep understanding. Then, as if to complete this circle of conversations and decisions, Lenore asked Lucia to approach Vermont to strengthen their bond. Lucia obediently walked over to him and put her paw on his face as if trying to comfort him or show her support. Vermont, seized by a sudden wave of tenderness, took her paw. This gesture, simple but meaningful, opened up a world of understanding and playfulness. As he began to play with Lucia, Vermont allowed himself to forget about everything in the world for a moment, immersed in this simple act of friendship and love. Thus, their interaction not only emphasized the strength of family bonds, but also showed how, through play and relaxed communication, one can find the way to each other's hearts, forgetting the difficulties and disagreements that may be encountered along the way. At this quiet moment, when the wind was only lazily playing with the leaves of the ancient trees, Vermont, with the look of a man bearing on his shoulders the weight of unsolved mysteries, turned to Lenore with a question that sounded almost like the whisper of a riddle. He asked if rumors had reached Lenore's ears about Sir Peyran Abelard, a figure shrouded in mysticism and secrecy whose name had begun to grow legendary in the kingdom. Peyran Abelard. The name reeked of the kind of stories that could grace the pages of the most dramatic and inspiring epics. This man, with no bloodline, no golden treasures, no army of loyal supporters behind him, decided to take a step worthy of a true hero. He joined the Order of Knights, armed only with a sword, and, perhaps, an indestructible faith in his own strength. Fate seemed to play a game with him, throwing challenges one after another, but his determination and ability to turn defeats into victories set him apart from many. Just 3 months after he joined the Order, Peyran Abelard's name has come to symbolize more than just the story of one knight. Rumors and stories of his exploits began to spread with such speed that even the oldest and most experienced knights could not remain indifferent to his achievements. The pinnacle of his journey was reached when he participated in a knights tournament, an event that brought together the best of the best, eager to prove their bravery and skill. Sir Peyran Abelode didn't just participate, he triumphed, displaying a skill and strategic thinking never seen before. His victory did not go unnoticed, and he was chosen as the personal knight of Princess Ianel, which was not only a confirmation of his exceptional qualities, but also the beginning of a new chapter in his life, filled with new challenges and adventures. This story of one man who was able to change his destiny by fighting for his place in a world where birth and fortune predetermined your path has inspired and continues to inspire many. Peyran Abilad, whose skill and strategic mind set him apart from the most worthy, possessed qualities that would make him an unrivaled commander of an army. His skills and talents were so great that he no doubt deserved a place at the head of the military forces. However, a twist of fate, determined by the emperor's own heart, changed his path. The emperor's deep and tender feeling for Princess Ionil led to Peyran being chosen not to lead the army, but to become the princess's personal protector. And in this role, he showed no less skill than if he had been leading an entire army, performing his duties flawlessly and with honor. Princess Ionil, for her part, could not remain indifferent to a man like Peyran. His strength, loyalty, and nobility made her want to get to know him better, to build a bridge that would allow them to bond. However, every time she tried to cross the invisible boundary separating them, Peyran remained true to his duty, maintaining the distance that his duties dictated. He wouldn't let himself forget his role, even in the face of the princess's desire to build a closer relationship with him. This invisible barrier between them created an aura of understatement and subtle emotional nuances around their relationship. Peyran, standing guard beside her, was the epitome of chivalric loyalty and duty, while a thin thread of affection, and perhaps even something more, which she herself could not yet fully comprehend or recognize, was budding in the princess's heart. This game of fate, where hearts yearn for each other through the fog of duty and obligation, added depth and layering to their relationship, making their interactions not just a matter of personal security, but a melody resounding on the edge of unspoken feelings. In a distant and challenging time, when the winds of change carry the glow of battle and the echo of battle cries, Peyran made a decision that would forever change the course of his life. Amidst endless confrontations and strife, where every choice can lead to unpredictable consequences, he is about to go to the front. This move was not simply an act of valor or an attempt to prove his strength. It was a test of himself, a desire to protect what he held dear despite personal sacrifice. In a world where duty and heart have an ongoing battle, Peyran realized that he could not be both a warrior protecting the lands and a bodyguard protecting loved ones at the same time. Ionil, who had previously shared his ups and downs, shared his doubts and hopes, faced a difficult choice. With a deep understanding of the gravity of the moment and the realization that any attempt to hold him back would only add to the pain of both of them, she decided not to stand in the way of his decision. There had long been a shroud of unspoken words and unshared feelings between them, and their relationship, which had seemed strong, had turned out to be only a shaky shadow of the past. Leaving behind him the shards of his former life, Peyran stepped onto the path of war, where each new day demanded of him not only courage and endurance, but also the ability to make decisions on which the lives of many depended. His deeds on the battlefield did not go unnoticed. A series of brilliant victories brought him not only respect and fame among his comrades, but also well-deserved awards. In the end, his efforts were crowned by receiving the coveted title and appointment as Commander-in-Chief of the Holy Order, an honor many could only dream of. It was fate that Ionil never saw Peyran again. Their paths parted like rivers flowing into different seas, leaving behind only the memory that their hearts had once beaten in unison. In this story, the character's every move is imbued with deep feelings and difficult choices, illustrating how unyielding circumstances and decisions made for the greater good shape their destinies, sometimes dividing their paths forever. In a world where political intrigue intertwines with personal dramas, Vermont shed light on an unexpected turn of events that fundamentally changed the perception of what was happening. He shared that he had been approached by messengers on behalf of Peyran, bearing news that the princess could in no way be the cause of the emperor's death. This revelation took Lucia by surprise, for Peyran, her faithful bodyguard for only a year, suddenly found himself in the role of defender of her honor and good name. She couldn't understand what had prompted him to come to her defense, especially considering his recent disappearance from her life. The situation was complicated by Lenore, who suddenly spoke out about Peyron. According to him, there were rumors that Peyron had allegedly lost his mind. Until now, Lenore had been skeptical of such speculations, but recent events had made him look at them from a different angle. Such rumors, no matter what, began to seem reasonable to him. At the same time, Vermont, with perhaps a different perspective or a deeper understanding of the situation, insisted that Peyron maintains clarity of mind. His confidence in Peyron's sanity countered the widespread rumors, adding another layer of mystery to an already confusing story. Lucia, stunned and at the same time disturbed by these revelations, felt a strong desire to know more. Despite her helpless position and her inability to actively participate in the conversation, she was eager to elicit as much information as possible from her interlocutors. Mixed feelings raged in her heart, from gratitude to Peyron for his unexpected support to anxiety and doubts about his current state and motives for his actions. This moment was a critical one, promising to unfold a new page in a complex mosaic of palace intrigue and personal experiences. In one of the many and wonderful corners of the world, where magic intertwines with reality like evergreen vines, an unusual discussion unfolded. Vermont, a being whose wisdom and experience were considered indispensable, expressed his disapproval of Lenore's decision to take Lucia with him on his upcoming journey. "Why would you take Lucia? She's only been hatched for a week," he said with reproach in his voice, turning to Lenore. However, Lenore, without losing his calmness and confidence, gently corrected him, clarifying that Lucia was in fact already a month old. The difference seemed insignificant, but to Lenore it was an important argument. Lucia, a young creature whose existence was just beginning to unfold before the world, listened intently to their conversation. Despite her youth and recent birth, she was already aware that her growth and development was slower than it might seem at first glance. Vermont's words, despite their bluntness and perhaps unintentional rudeness, seemed unfair to her. Lucia realized that it was not in her power to change the natural course of her growth, and this knowledge gave her the quiet courage to staunchly accept such remarks. Lenore, despite Vermont's objections, had already made his plans. He announced that in a week's time he would be traveling to the capital, where he would have an audience with the prince himself. This meeting would mean much to Lenore and his companions, and the importance of the moment was evident to all present. Vermont, who had initially expressed skepticism about Lucia's participation in their journey, suddenly changed his tone. After announcing Lenore's upcoming audience, he declared his intention to accompany Lenore to the capital. "A strong mage like me will definitely be needed," Vermont said with confidence in his voice. The statement was full of determination and support, emphasizing the importance of their common cause and the journey ahead. Thus, a discussion that began with concern and disapproval evolved into agreement and coming together for a common goal. The companions, each with their own unique abilities and experiences, were preparing for an upcoming adventure that promised to be the beginning of something great and meaningful in their lives. While preparing for an important journey to the capital, Lenore temporarily left his companions to attend to equally important matters in the duchy. He plunged into the world of administrative work, where a pile of papers and documents awaited him, requiring careful review and signatures. In this pile of papers, each sheet required him to make decisions that could affect the lives of many people. During this tense period, Butler Aiden, a man who not only served Lenore but was also his trusted advisor, suddenly turned his attention to Lucia. Aiden noted Lucia's unusual coloring, which was different from any divine beast specimen he knew of. Lenore, hearing this, confirmed his words, admitting that he himself had never seen such a glow in divine beasts. Lucia, who had become the unexpected subject of their conversation, was shocked at such open statements about her uniqueness. The freedom with which Lenore spoke of it in front of Aiden was especially surprising to her, for it could only mean one thing. Aiden was no ordinary human either. Her being, dwelling on the border of realities, intuitively sensed that Aiden was hiding something more than met the eye. Lenore, noticing Lucia's excitement, decided to dispel her doubts by explaining her special position of Aiden, who was indeed on the border of two worlds. This information could be the answer to many of Lucia's questions and would bring her even closer to understanding her place in this world. Before Lenore could continue, however, Aidan, with his usual determination and practicality, reminded the Duke of the urgency of current affairs. "Keep your mind on your work," he said, emphasizing the importance of Lenore's duties to the duchy. This moment emphasized the complexity and multifaceted nature of life in their world, where even in conversations about unusual creatures and the secrets of one's own origins, one must be mindful of the daily duties and tasks on the shoulders of the rulers. Lucia, lost in deep thought, tried to unravel the mystery of Lenore's words about some border of worlds. The topic had entered her thoughts like an obsession, leaving unanswered questions behind. Time passed and she remained in the dark, for all her thoughts were focused on waiting for the moment when Lenore would finally share her findings. But Lenore's attention was completely absorbed by the ducal duties, which never seemed to end. First 7 hours, then 9. The time dragged slowly and agonizingly. Lucia, gripped by a sense of loneliness and oblivion, felt left behind as her father did not even take the time to exchange even a few words with her. Feeling tired and frustrated, she suddenly felt Lenore's warm embrace. He, noticing her exhaustion and frustration, as if reading her thoughts and feelings, offered her a small consolation, a chance to take her mind off the endless waiting and go for a walk. The offer sounded to Lucia like a long-awaited release, like news that her patience and loyalty had been noticed. With relief in her heart and joy in her soul, she quickly headed for the exit, ready to soak up every moment of freedom and renewal that the walk around the estate gave her. Her steps were light and quick, for the opportunity to feel free for a moment from the weight of expectation was priceless. Lucia perked up, and her soul filled with new colors at the thought of the upcoming time spent alone with herself, among the familiar and beloved corners of the estate that had witnessed many important moments of her life. At the moment when Lucia was seeking solitude and peace in a stroll through her estate, Agris, as if guided by some unknown feeling or mysterious design, directed his steps toward the residence which rose opposite the imperial palace. It was a place where not so long ago, just a month ago, his sister and father had crossed the long corridors unhindered, filling them with life and warmth. But it was there, in a space where every corner could tell of past joys and sorrows, that Agris, with his own hands, ended their lives, severing a thread of existence that could not be reconnected. After this tragedy, a wave of shock and horror swept through all the aristocrats, forcing them to leave these lands that had witnessed unspeakable carnage. They were anxious to get as far away as possible from the place where the blood of their companions and friends had been spilled, leaving behind the echoes of past tragedies. All but one girl whose heart knew no fear, or perhaps was driven by something else equally powerful. This girl, standing on the threshold of entering the palace from tomorrow, saw the death of the princess not as a tragedy, but as an opportunity. For her, this tragic outcome opened the door to a new life, for now, by a cruel coincidence of fate, she is destined to become Agris's companion. Her feelings and thoughts, shrouded in a shadow of joy at the death of the princess, seemed intriguing and mysterious, foreshadowing a new twist in an already convoluted story. Lucia, a small and curious vixen, found herself sitting in the center of attention, surrounded by servants who were happy to offer her a variety of goodies. This unexpected turn of events left her confused, for only a moment ago she had been busy with her usual amusements. Easy strolls through the corridors of the huge castle that belonged to her father. Moving freely through its expanse, she relished the opportunity to explore every corner of this massive structure, breathing in the stories embedded within its walls. However, her adventure took an unexpected turn when an incredibly pleasant and enticing aroma awakened her inner explorer and prompted her to search for the source of that smell, which happened to be in the kitchen. The appearance of a fox in such an unusual place as the kitchen caused shock at first among the servants present there. They could not understand how this lovely creature had come to be among them, or what the intentions of this unexpected guest might be. However, the situation changed dramatically when Lenore entered the scene. His words that he cared for the vixen as if she were his own daughter shed light on what was happening and immediately changed the attitude of the servants towards the unexpected guest. Realizing that Lucia was not just a stray fox, but Lenore's ward, they quickly made the decision to give her all the care and attention they could. The servants, now enthusiastic and loving, surrounded the vixen, offering her the best treats they could find in the kitchen. This sudden shift from bewilderment to welcome emphasized not only their respect for Lenore, but also their willingness to accept and care for anyone in need of care, even if that someone turned out to be a cute and fidgety vixen. Thus, Lucia, through an unexpected union of circumstances and the kindness of new friends, found herself the center of attention and care, experiencing the joy of the unexpected hospitality and warmth with which she was surrounded. The moment the atmosphere of the kitchen was saturated with care and merry laughter, the air was suddenly filled with the sounds of a familiar melody, gently enveloping the space. That music, like a harbinger of unknown events, made Lucia wary. Suddenly, as if it were a setup for a theatrical production, one of the cooks lost his balance and sent a flying pot of hot soup flying in her direction. Time seemed to slow down, heralding an imminent collision. However, just when it seemed that the consequences would be inevitable and the hot soup was about to touch Lucia's fur, something amazing happened. The music reached its climax, at which point a magical barrier erupted around the vixen. It was like a dense, invisible wall shielding her from the hot soup, reflecting it away so that not a drop touched her. The entire hall fell into stunned silence, the servants watching, unable to believe their eyes, worried for Lucia's well-being. The servants, who had encountered such a display of magic for the first time, were shocked, but their concern for Lucia only increased. They looked at her with a mixture of surprise and concern, trying to figure out what had happened. Lucia, despite the commotion, walked over to the cook, who was sitting on the floor, distraught at what had happened. She stroked him affectionately, trying to support and calm him, while her mind was spinning with questions. It wasn't clear whether it was a manifestation of her own hidden powers, of which she herself was unaware, or whether her safety was being closely monitored by someone else with magical power who had decided to step in and protect her in time. This incident added mystery and enigma to the already uneasy relationship between Lucia and the castle's inhabitants, awakening in each of them a deep sense of wonder and admiration. At the same time, the event strengthened their resolve to care for Lucia, now not only as Lenore's favorite, but as a being with perhaps unknown and great powers. As the corridors of the ducal castle filled with the anticipation of an important meeting, Lucia spotted her father and brother preparing for an audience with the emperor himself. In that moment, an overwhelming desire to keep up with her loved ones, to not be left out of the big events and adventures, was born in her heart. Having decided to act, Lucia jumped onto Lenore's mantle with agility and indomitable enthusiasm, counting on the miracle of teleportation that would carry her along with him to the center of all major events, the capital. At this critical moment, their attention was drawn to Vermont, who noticed Lucia's unusual desire to travel. His question about whether Lenore was going to take the vixen with him cut through the tense atmosphere, making everyone freeze in anticipation of the answer. Lenore, without a moment's hesitation and demonstrating to everyone present his unwavering affection and care for his daughter, warmly took Lucia in his arms, as if confirming her right to be by his side in any, even the most unpredictable life situation. Vermont's comment that Lucia might encounter trouble in the capital city, such as fleas, only added levity to the conversation. He may have been trying to be concerned for her well-being, but Lenore, never missing an opportunity to turn the situation into a joke, suggested that Vermont use his magical abilities to transform Lucia into a human. This exchange of remarks not only demonstrated their mutual respect and friendliness, but also revealed Lenore's willingness to go to any lengths to ensure Lucia's safety and happiness, even if it meant taking her on a journey with unknown consequences. Thus, on the eve of an important audience with the emperor, a small scene in the corridor of the ducal castle was a testament to strong family ties, a willingness to protect their loved ones, and an unusual but deep friendship between a man and his unusual pet that promised the beginning of new amazing adventures. The moment the magic of the Vermont spell began to envelop Lucia with its invisible yet palpable presence, the environment was filled with an inexpressible excitement. This moment became a turning point when the graceful vixen, like a character from ancient legends, soared into the heights, leaving a trail of shimmering sparks behind her. In just a few heartbeats, under the influence of an ancient spell, an incredible transformation took place. Lucia's body, graceful, began to change its outline until it took on the shape of a human baby. Realizing her new guise, Lucia, now no longer a vixen but a human child, experienced the first impulse to try to speak. However, instead of words, there was only innocent mooing from her lips, which could not help but be taken without emotion. This unexpected sound, so pure and sincere, caused a storm of emotion in her father and brother, who immediately plunged into a good-natured argument, trying to unravel the secret meaning behind the sound. It seemed to his father, Lenore, that in that sweet-sounding mooing lay a call to him, as if Lucia were trying to say "Daddy," addressing him with her first word in human form. At the same time, Vermont, her brother, was unwavering in his conviction that the sound meant baby brother, for it seemed that the infant was trying to make a connection with him. All the while her loved ones were excitedly trying to interpret her first sounds, Lucia felt a wave of emotion mixed with frustration. She had so much to say, so many experiences and thoughts she wanted to share, but the restriction of her newfound infantile appearance put a barrier in the way of that communication. The tears rolling down her cheeks were not so much a manifestation of childish capriciousness as a reflection of the deep sadness of not being able to express all that was building up in her heart. Arriving at the Imperial Manor, Lucia's former home was marked by a palpable tangle of feelings and memories. The times when Lucia had owned the expanse of these grand halls as a princess seemed to her now a distant and almost forgotten episode of her life. The change of roles was so swift and unexpected that even the majestic walls that had once seemed like home to her now seemed alien and unfriendly. Vermont, noticing the unbreakable bond between Lenore and Lucia, especially the way her father carried her tenderly and openly in his arms, suggested that perhaps Lenore was eager to publicly display his bond with his daughter, as if wanting the world to know she existed. Lenore, catching the implication of Vermont's words, only nodded in agreement. In his eyes, Lucia was more than a daughter. She was something special, a unique creature whose path in this world, he thought, should be lighted with care and protection. In their world, where beings with divine bloodlines like Lucia and Vermont grew at an incredible rate, leaving their parents' doorstep at an early age, Lucia was an exception. She was already a month old, but unlike her brother Vermont, who had left home at only a year old, she showed no signs of such rapid development. Not only had she not begun to speak, but she had not grown an inch. This fact made Lenora not only surprised, but determined to be a support and protector for Lucia in the human world if her development continued at a human pace. He realized that life in human society could be full of trials and difficulties for someone as unique as his daughter. The Duke was ready to assume the role of her protector, providing not only physical but also spiritual support, ready to become an insurmountable barrier to any obstacles in her path.